a minute or two, and
okay. We do have a couple more
to sign up.
attendees.
Yeah, join in.
And I am double booked for another public meeting on another project for a little run. So I'll stay probably for the first 30 minutes and then switch over so I can at least catch the back end of that meeting.
Okay, understood. All right, so it's just now 7 o'clock, but I have a handful of folks that have signed up. In a minute, Jose, I'll ask if you can provide just technical directions on how to participate.
Sorry, I was chewing. So did you want me to go over that in a little bit?
Yeah, why don't we go ahead and at least start with some of the background. So I know we just have a few folks. Welcome all of you who have joined, and let's go ahead, Jose, if you could, and provide instructions on how attendees can participate, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna take the presenter role from Shannon just a little bit.
And I see Tammy has her hand up
Yes.
already, so
Yeah.
that's good. Maybe she's going to demonstrate how the technology works. She knows this.
It's either that or she was doing the wave. I saw the hand go back down a little bit. So, good evening, everyone. I'll definitely unmute Tammy in just in a few. But I wanted to share my event window just in case the WebEx is new to anybody. We have a lot of products. So as you can see, to kind of raise your hand, kind of like how Tammy has, right to the left of this little microphone feedback button will be the little raise hand tool. And to access that, you actually have to pop up your participants window. So you got to make sure it's highlighted in blue. You should have all panelists, but also attendees. And then you should be able to access that raise your hand tool. If it's not possible to see that tool, you can open up your chat as well. You have to want to make sure that's highlighted in blue. And you can send your questions or if you have any through the chat if you're unable to have, if you're having some audio issues or stuff like that. So with that, Supervisor, did we want to unmute Tammy for a sec before getting started?
Yes, please do. Tammy, go ahead.
Thank you. Lynn Molston is trapped and can't talk. So can you move her to participant panelist, please? She's in attendees.
She can, I think we're having, I think everybody's an attendee until they raise their hand, right?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Thinking this is like the task force.
Task force on every other Monday night, yeah.
But no, Lynn, did you want to, well, what we're going to do is and if Lynn has any questions or Tammy, but what we're going to do is start out first with a presentation by county staff on the project and provide some background, and then there'll be an opportunity for folks who want to ask questions. But at this point, do any of the attendees have any questions before we get started? Okay. All right. Well, then let's go ahead and do this. 7:03. We may not need to go all the way till 9 o'clock, but let's go ahead. Shannon, go ahead and take it away. And I would expect we may see some more folks joining, but no time like the present to get started. And Shannon, we can see that. We see your slides.
I'm gonna figure out how to unmute myself. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
That's my first time using it. All right, but you can see the slides, so let's get started. So my name is Shannon Bell. I am the project manager for the Sunset Hills Road Drainage Improvement Project. And I just wanted to kind of share with everybody what we're doing out here. So the first thing I wanted to go over is what I'm going to be talking about. So I want to give everybody an introduction to what our design process is in stormwater planning. We'll talk about the project goals, what the existing conditions are like, what we're proposing with our design, the next steps, and then I'll leave everybody with my contact information. So if you have any questions about it, you can definitely reach out to me and I will do my best to get you the answers. So here's kind of like an overview of where our project is located. Sunset Hills is right here. The Hidden Creek Country Club is right here, and then we have the VDOT Park and Ride and the WO&D Trail, and the yellow outline is where our project is going to be. So like I said, I wanted to start off kind of explaining why we do these projects and who we are. So like I said, my name is Shannon. I'm with the Stormwater Planning Division in Fairfax County. So we do a lot of projects throughout the county. We do these projects in order to meet the requirements that are set forth in the Clean Water Act, the MS4, which is the Municipal Separate Stormwater System, Sewer System Permit. We do them to help meet the Chesapeake Bay TMDL requirements. And we also do projects to maintain existing facilities and public infrastructure. We work on public safety and emergency response, and we also work on dam safety regulations. So just a little background on who we are. So now about the project. So with this project, this is a picture of the site during the 2011 Tropical Storm Lee. There was a significant flooding event here. So this kind of site was brought to our attention as something that needs to be fixed so this doesn't happen in the future. So our project goals are, we want to mitigate the frequent flooding on the Sunset Hills Road and properties adjacent to Pond 913. We want to relieve the pressure on the WO&D trail embankment that happens due to this ponded water. And we want to provide water quality benefits by upgrading the farm pond located on the golf course property to a stormwater management facility. And then one of the other goals of our project is that we are looking to come up with a drainage solution that's gonna fix this flooding problem while maintaining the current use of the golf course and all the other adjacent properties. So what we do here, we don't want to impact anything that's already existing around our site. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Difficult Run Watershed so you guys have an idea on why this is happening. So the project is located in the Difficult Run Watershed. A watershed is an area of land that all drains to the same point. So Difficult Run is about 58 square miles and it's about 18% impervious. So impervious means it's a land cover that doesn't really infiltrate water. So when it rains, the water isn't absorbed into the land. It just is sent down, down into the sewer network. So impervious would be like rooftops, sidewalks, roadways, things like that. Whereas a pervious surface like woods and grasses are really good at absorbing the water and reducing the amount of runoff that is produced during rain events. So just for your knowledge, it's 58 acres for Difficult Run Watershed and about 18% impervious. So then I came up with a drainage area that's specific to our site. So like I said earlier, 18% for the whole watershed. For our project, the drainage area is about 48% impervious, which is really high. So compared to like the rest of Difficult Run, this is a very concentrated area of development, which is why we're experiencing these higher flows. So just an idea of like what area is draining to the site. I highlighted it in orange here. So our site is located right here. And then we get drainage from this area south of the Dulles Toll Road, a portion of the Dulles Toll Road, and this area in between Sunset Hills Road and Delstol Road. So with all that water coming to our site, so now you have an idea of that. So I wanted to talk about what the existing conditions are and why we're experiencing the flooding that's going on here. So I had our design engineer do some analysis to figure out when ponding actually occurs. Like, what's the smallest storm event that's going to create ponding in this VDOT park and ride. So they determined that it was about the 10-year storm. So a 10-year storm is a storm that has the probability to occur once every 10 years. So it just because it's like projected to occur once every 10 years, it could occur more than that, or it could occur less than that. But based on historical data, looking at rainfall events from the past like 80 years, they've been able to come up with rainfall depths that that happen with this probability. So the 10-year storm is, for Fairfax County, is 4.8 inches over 24 hours. So if there was a rain event where it rained 4.8 inches over the whole day, this is how much ponding we would have at the VDOT Park and Ride. So in this dark blue area, we'd get about a foot of ponding, and then in this light blue area, it'd be about 6 inches of ponding, and then out here, because this is the low point of the site, so both sides drain down, and then this is where we get the ponded water. And it happens because the WO&D trail acts as a pond embankment. It's a raised trail, so that means the trail is up here and then the parking lot is down here. So it creates a barrier where the water that enters this VDOT Park and Ride, it can't go anywhere because there's this embankment here. So it just gets trapped in the bottom. It's like a little pool, and it just fills up over time. So in 2011, when Tropical Storm Lee hit, it was a really large rain event where it rained really heavily over a couple hours and flooded this whole area. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, the 10-year storm event is about where we start experiencing flooding. I believe that Tropical Storm Lee was a 500-year storm event, so it's significantly larger than what a typical rainfall event was. But since it rained so hard so quickly, we overwhelmed the storm sewer that's located in the park and ride right now. So so the park and ride obviously flooded, but as well the Kaiser Permanente building down here also flooded. So water backed up, filled up this parking lot, and it also filled up this grassed area right here, or this treed area, which is pond 913. And with that ponding, the water was able to back up all the way to the Kaiser Permanente building and impacted some of their facility as well. And this is all due to the embankment on this WO&D trail and the inlets and the culvert. There's a bunch of inlets, a bunch of storm drains located in this VDOT park and ride. All of these inlets connect to a pipe that runs underneath the WO&D trail. This pipe is called a culvert. This culvert, we sent a camera underneath the trail to kind of get an idea of what the culvert looked like. So this is from that TV monitoring. So this culvert was built in the 1850s. It has done very well, but it has outlasted its expected lifespan, and it's going to fail eventually. And when that does happen, it's going to have a negative impact on the golf course property that's located on the other side of the WO&D trail, and potentially the adjacent property owners as well, because we're going to be sending a lot of water down there that hasn't seen that much water before. So it's going to start carving new, larger channels, and it's going to result in losing property. So we want to fix that with our project, help alleviate this problem. So right now, the first thing that we want to do with our project is we want to upsize the storm sewer lines that are located going under the WO&D trail. So this is a plan view. I know it's very technical, but I think this is the best way that I can show you guys what's going on. So we're going to be installing large pipes that run, so here's the VDOT park and ride. We'll install some new inlets and then larger pipes that are going to run under the trail and then outfall down here, like at the border of the Hidden Creek Country Club golf course property. These larger pipes and new inlets are going to allow the water that flows to the VDOT park and ride to enter into the storm sewer system a lot faster. So right now, that 1850s culvert limits the amount of water that can leave the site. So by expanding that pipe, we're going to be able to let a lot more water out quicker, which is going to help alleviate that flooding problem that we're currently experiencing. So the other step of what we're going to be doing is we're going to be installing a pond. Right now, there is an existing pond on the golf course property. This pond is just a farm pond. It wasn't really designed for detention. It's pretty shallow. It doesn't help like slow down the water or detain it for a long period of time. So we need to put something more substantial here because we're sending out a lot more water now with our new pipes. So we need to install a large pond that's going to be able to help detain the water and then release it at a slower rate into the stream that's on the golf course. Because if we don't install the pond, it's just going to tear through the golf course property and it's going to enlarge that stream. So we want to make sure that we're safely outfalling all of this water. So I had a rendering developed of what the site looks like now and then what it's going to look like with our proposed pond. So as you can see right now, here is the existing green for hole 4 and the tee boxes for hole 5, and then we have our existing pond right here. With our proposed project, we're going to be installing our pond here, and as I mentioned, we'll have those underground large stormwater pipes going right here. So we'll outfall into the pond. We had to move the greens and the sand traps and these tee boxes a little bit so that we can accommodate our large pond while still allowing the golf course to function as it is. And then we also have a small stream restoration here because we want to make sure that when we do outfall the water from our pond at the slower rate, then we're outfalling into a stable channel. So we'll be doing like a small little channel improvement portion right there. So then I don't know how many of you are active golf course users, but I put together a little sketch of what hole 4 is going to look like now. So we are decreasing the distances of these holes, but that's what we think the aerial image is going to look like. So that kind of goes over what we're doing with our project. What's next? We need to work on securing land rights. So we're working on private properties here, and of course on the golf course. So in order to do that work, we need to get easements so that we can maintain it in the future and we can go in during construction and do the work that we need to do. So once we get our land rights, then we're going to be able to move on to our final design. We're right now at our 95% design. So what we have is pretty much, it's ready, but we just have a couple minor tweaks to make, and then we'll be able to complete our design, and then we'll need to finish our permitting process so we can get all the required permits for construction, and then we will start construction. So that's what I have. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. And Jose, we don't have a tremendous number of attendees, So we're just going to pull everybody up into a panelist, make it a lot easier for folks to ask questions and make comments. And Lynn, I see your hand up. Go right ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi there.
Hi, Lynn.
Okay. Hi, sorry. I was on the road. We were heading from New Orleans to Houston, taking my mom to the Anderson Center for evaluation. So we just got in when the call started. So my question, and Shannon, thank you so much for that overview. I'm going to have to go back and view the beginning of the presentation. But my question is, do you not have to go before Reston Association as part of the approval process?
This is Charles Smith. I work with Shannon. I think the answer is that and I appreciate your question very much. We work closely with Reston Association. In this case, Reston Association property is not associated with the project. It's private parcels, but we are subject to the review board. So when it comes to tree impacts, we absolutely have to go before the review board to make sure our tree impacts comply with Reston standards. But Reston Association itself is not a reviewing authority since their land is not involved in the process. And I believe
But
that's
the club is RA coveted land. It's part of the deed.
Okay. Well, we certainly will comply with whatever's necessary. We can
Okay.
work closely with the staff at Reston. We do on a lot of projects, but I was not aware that their specific review was required in this case, but certainly the review board, any other necessary reviews will go through.
Okay, and the other question that I had is, you know, and I know that we have exchanged several emails, Charles, and I appreciate your responses, but I still think that, you know, there are other options for remediating this situation rather than impacting one of the prized open space assets in Reston.
I certainly appreciate that perspective. I think what we exchanged was some ideas about whether or not we could attenuate the flow upstream of the trail. We did look at that extensively through a value engineering analysis, which was done in our 35% design. And we looked at whether or not we could create additional ponding. And one of those thoughts was creating a massive vault under the VDOT park and ride. But the size of the park and ride itself, as well as the utilities there and the pipe elevations underneath it, wouldn't allow a large enough facility to hold enough water to relieve the need to put bigger pipes to the trail. And then we also looked at whether or not we could put pipes through and just let the stream go or restore the stream all the way through the golf course. Our determination is that if you go into the golf course and restore the streams, you have a much larger impact than if you simply reconfigure the existing pond to allow it to absorb that water and let it go slowly, as Shannon described. So that was kind of our how we try to balance the impact of private lands as well as the cost of implementing the public project. And so we were very sensitive to that aspect. And one more thing I was going to add is we have a really significant concern about the safety and impacts to the Washington Old Dominion Regional Park itself. It is acting as a dam. It was never designed that way. And as Shannon pointed out, that culvert will eventually fail. So in addition to the life safety issues of alleviating the flooding and allowing the passage of water, we really want to prevent failure of the WOD and its culvert, which is truly, it's a national register site and a national trail system that we really want to protect. So I think all those things came into play.
Okay, my one last question, and I'm sorry for usurping the time that others may require, but one last question and an observation is that there are other options on the south side of Sunset Hills between Sunset Hills and Kaiser Permanente, that is an area that would make a lot of sense to place a detention basin rather than the current
I
plan.
fully
So I don't know
appreciate
if you
that.
all have looked at that.
Yes, the original study looked at that. That's for us in 913, as Shannon mentioned. Again, it's an issue of the size of the footprint and the invert elevations that allow the water to flow underneath the road and the trail. You simply can't create a large enough hole in the ground, essentially, to hold enough water and let it out, given the elevations that are there, to prevent the flooding that occurs. So it's just a geographic constraint with the development that's already occurred, where you can't create a large enough impoundment to offset the impact of that flood water. So what we determined is, because the WND essentially, it's built across a stream valley, because it's constricted that stream valley, the real impoundment is the whole area where all the buildings and the road are. So if you were able to remove all the roads and building, you could impound water significantly. But since all that infrastructure is already built, there's not enough room there to hold enough water to prevent flooding. So the only answer at this point then is to open up the flow through the trail to prevent both the flooding and the failure of the trail. And that's why this project got to where it is in terms of the design solutions.
I think that you could help remediate the flow that goes down to the trail by doing something on the property between Sunset Hills and the Kaiser Permanente building.
Yeah, Lynn, before we go to John, Shannon, if I could ask you to put the overhead slide back up. Not that one. Let's see, keep going. The one that shows Sunset Hills.
This one.
No, the keep going. I think it was one of the first ones.
I think it's the one that showed where
The
flow was
drainage.
coming from the.
Yeah, the flows. Yeah.
It's like a gray one that you had colored.
Yeah. This one.
Actually, that one. There we go. Yeah. So, well, actually, that doesn't show too well. But Lynn, you're talking about
This pond
the
right
area
here
there.
is the one that we're talking about right now. Is
Okay.
913.
That's it, Lynn. I think that's right. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. I know Lynn's dealing with multiple things right now. And we can come back to Lynn, but
I'm sorry, I couldn't find the unmute button. Yeah, I'm trying to, I am getting settled and I'm trying to log in to
Okay.
the Wi-Fi here at the hotel. So I'll be able to see this in like 5 minutes.
Okay, no problem. We'll go to John and then Tammy
Yeah.
and then back
Perfect.
to you,
Thank you,
Lynn.
Walter.
So John, go right ahead.
Thank you, Walter. I appreciate you doing this, and I appreciate staff's hard work on this. I've got a couple of questions because I'm a little confused by the presentation. One is, has the county run topo on this area?
Yeah. So we have performed a survey
And what's the low point?
of the park and ride.
The whole area,
Low point of the whole area.
the whole area that we're trying to fix.
So the lowest point of the park and ride right here is 353.64. So this is where all the water ponds up. There's an inlet located right here. And
That's
then,
the low point of the park and ride. What's the low point of the entire catchment basin?
The area,
The
yeah.
orange.
right here.
Yes.
So I don't know what the low point of this pond is. It wasn't included in our survey. Our survey consisted of the WO&D trail, the VDOT park and ride, and then the downstream Sunset Hills. Sorry, the Hidden
Right.
Creek.
So
golf course.
that gets to my question. So I kind of focused on this as I was playing golf this weekend. where you're proposing to put this pond is not the low point. And I'm not an engineer. I'm not a surveyor. I only represent surveyors. As Walter knows, I have the burden of having been on the planning commission for 9 years. I think I know how to read a topo map. Water flows downhill. Why is the pond not going at the lowest point? The lowest point, as you showed here, is all south of the W&OD. The golf course is north of the W&OD.
John, I can probably answer that.
I'm
Actually,
not understanding why the pond is going on the golf course if it's not the low point, which is where you would normally put a stormwater collection or detention facility.
the golf course is indeed much lower. So it is, the stream's flowing north. So the golf course is lower than the WD Trail, the Park and Ride, and Sunset Hills, and everything upstream of it. The low point at the Park and Ride is they buried. So essentially, when they built the Park and Ride, they buried the old culvert. And the bottom of that culvert is the lowest point at the WD Trail, but the pond on the golf course is even lower. So in order to drain it properly, you have to get the water out from around the WD Trail, which is blocking the old stream valley. And they probably set that pond back in the 1850s when they built the culvert. They probably laid the invert of the culvert directly on the stream bottom. So that's the old stream, the historic stream course. And it is indeed flowing north at that point. So it's lower on the golf course.
Wow, that surprises me. I'm not challenging you, but that surprises me. There's a property right about where the right about where it says 36.7. And that property, Walter, isn't that in for a land use change? It's where the Montessori school is and an office building.
Let's see, it's not the self-storage place that went up, but the,
Course
No,
overlook.
there's the other
Yeah.
side of north side of Sunset Hills.
yeah, that actually, Jose, is that
There's a-
active? I know they've talked about it.
Which property
There's
is
a
this one?
property there that's a commercial office and a Montessori school.
Yeah, I don't know if they've got anything pending, John, but I know it's coming at some
It was
point.
just in the news in the last week or two.
There is an FDP for Isaac Newton Square.
No. This is west of Isaac Newton Square.
I think
So
just to be
west-
clear,
west of
that's
the-
the
Golf course overlook.
Oh, golf course.
yeah, it's
overlook.
golf.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
golf course. Yeah, it's golf course overlook, and we've been working actively with the applicant to obtain land rights to build our project because we do need easements.
And that's a
but
parking
we are
reduction,
not-
John. Yeah,
We're not familiar with
sorry?
the current status, but they are definitely reconfiguring their site significantly.
yeah.
So Shannon's been working with their engineers to make sure our project is compatible with their changes.
So they
My-
have,
My casual observation is that the eastern side of that property is lower than the golf course. I'll state that as an observation. I'm not going to question your topo.
They
Um,
border the golf course, as does Fairfax Executive Center. So essentially, it's a straight line. And we're working with all three property owners where they meet north of the WD Trail. So golf course overlooks on the west. East side is Fairfax Executive Center. And the north side is the Hidden Creek Golf Course. And so we're working with all three property owners to try to get land rights to complete the project.
Let me state, I understand the need to solve this problem. I understand what happened in 2011 at the Park and Ride. I will tell you, I know some of my colleagues that are members of Hidden Creek are on the call, and we know when you get any kind of rain, there is a culvert that goes under the golf course on the fourth fairway right in front of the green. And whatever is there currently is not sufficient to handle even a casual heavy rain, not a 10-year, 50-year, 100-year event. And so I understand completely the need to fix this, not only for the region and the community, but quite frankly, there's a need to fix this for the golf course. But I'm questioning why all of the solution has to go on the golf course property and dramatically change the character of that hole, as opposed to something that is a little bit more regional and maybe puts a burden on some of the other landowners, not just Hidden Creek. Can you answer for me how do you define a failure of that 1800s culvert? What do you mean by a failure?
Shannon, you want to talk about dam breach?
Yeah, so I can talk about that. So if that pipe was to start collapsing within itself, I think I have some pictures of what a failure or what a culvert that was also designed in the 1850s looks like, and how it's holding up now. So then you can start to see what happens. So the sides will start coming in, and then eventually there's going to be gaps along the side of that culvert that the water is going to be able to enter through. And as it enters through there, it's going to start taking sediment with it. So then over time, those like small gaps are going to get larger gaps, and then we're going to have holes underneath the W&D trail. So then the weight of soil on top of it's going to start collapsing, and then eventually, like during a very large storm event, the water is going to come through with a really high velocity that's going to like push its way through, and cause like a massive failure of the trail. And then all of that water and sediment is going to be pushed downstream into the golf course property, into that stream. And then with those high velocities, it's going to start eating away the sides of the channel. So the stream there is going to get larger, and then the trees are going to start falling in around the stream due to the high
As you
forces.
remember, a couple of years ago, the 100 Mill Road collapsed on Culvert Run downstream of Lake Academic Park, and VDOT had to close the road and then rebuild it. Our big concerns include the fact that not only could the WD collapse and cause direct impact to the properties and close the trail and impact the historic site, but our only real solution at that point would be to put a bridge in and allow open flow of the water through the old trail embankment, which the pond on the golf course can't handle that. It would blow out. It cannot handle the amount of flow that the WD is holding back. Essentially, you have two dams in series. The WD is acting as a dam, and the pond on the golf course is acting as a dam, but it was never designed to hold that water. Neither of them were. So if the first dam fails, the second dam will also eventually fail. So in order to prevent failure of both of them, our solution is to pass the water through the WD and then create a reinforced new dam on the golf course where the existing dam is. So we shift the hole, but we don't take it away. It changes the play, but it also preserves the integrity of the golf course itself while not allowing the failure of that golf course pond. Because if the golf course pond fails, then you lose everything in the golf course itself. So it's a domino effect if you don't address the issue in the near term and allow it to persist.
Is there, back to my, and again, I could be wrong, but back to my my thought that adjacent property that's in for a land use change, could a culvert be built from the existing pond on Hidden Creek underneath the fourth fairway and connect to a new pond on that property that's off of Sunset Hills Road?
Well, essentially what we're doing is we're ponding water onto that property by utilizing the existing dam on Hidden Creek Golf Course, because the pond has to be large enough to hold a significant quantity of water. And as we mentioned, there's so much infrastructure that's already built. There's no place to hold it up other than at that pond. And once you go beyond that pond, you'd be talking about creating what's called an inline pond on a major floodplain of Culvert Run, and actually taking away huge percentages of the golf course in order to hold that water up. So by doing it on this tributary to Culvert Run on the very south edge of the golf course, we're able to minimize the impact on the golf course overall. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Okay. Quick comment and then a question. I don't mean to monopolize the discussion either, and I appreciate your informing us. My comment is it seems a little bit unfair as you presented in the beginning of your presentation. The golf course is not an impervious surface. The golf course is grass by and large and soil. But all the impervious surface is off the golf course property, and that's a big part of what contributes to the problem. And it seems like this is a case of no good deed goes unpunished. You know, the golf course is absorbing a big part of the water, so now we got to take all of it and put the pond on. That's just sort of an observation. My final question is this. To what extent is the county coordinating with Hidden Creek to bring in a golf course architect so that if indeed a pond has to go on the Hidden Creek property, it is designed in such a way that it is compatible with the golf course. It doesn't change the character of the fourth fairway, the fourth green, the fifth tee box. Is that kind of coordination, or is that kind of design professional being brought in to this? Or is this solely looking at it from the standpoint of we got to solve a regional stormwater problem?
So we have we've coordinated with the golf course. We've shown them what our proposed plans are. We've talked about the hole, where we're shifting the hole, where we're shifting the tee boxes. So we have talked to them about it. I do not believe we've brought in a golf course architect to review our proposed design. We're just trying to replace what we're taking away by putting our pond there, and shifting it so that it'll still be usable with our proposed design.
Yeah, I'll follow up and say that our intent, John, is to continue the playable, nature of the course. So we certainly will cooperate and collaborate to ensure the best of our ability to provide, replace in kind what we displace with the pond footprint and make sure we minimize the disruption to the course itself and its usefulness for the users.
Okay. Well, I would just respectfully suggest that professional expertise be brought in, just a matter of fairness to Hidden Creek. I mean, if the county is going to undergo a taking through whatever means, I think there ought to be some sensitivity to the interest of the golf course, and if indeed this pond has to be built, and it has to be built where it's proposed, that it be done in a manner that obviously suits the engineering needs of the project, but yet does so in a way that minimizes any adverse impact on the golf course itself. I think as a minimum that the county owes that to Hidden Creek as a corporation and the residents of the county and the residents of the Hunter Mill District that are members and use that golf course. So thank you. I appreciate it.
We certainly appreciate that. And just to clarify, we are not taking anything. We are actually seeking. That's why we've been very slow and deliberate in this process. We're seeking an agreeable solution where it's a voluntary giving of the easement. Obviously, there's compensation involved to the landowners, so the county will have to pay for those easements. But we're not taking anything. We've not gone to condemnation. We're just trying to make sure we prevent potential failures which would cause significant impacts. If we don't do this project, it could destroy the golf course as it's known. If the WND fails, you could lose all playability and be entirely the responsibility of the private owner and the members to build whatever infrastructure they could to alleviate the impacts of floodwaters. Because at that point, the stream would just flow through what used to be the WD trail, and all the impacts would be on the downstream owner.
Can I ask one other question? Because I'm looking at the,
Thanks, John.
with all of the structured parking that's being built at the metro station, is that park and ride still necessary?
So we've been having discussions with VDOT about that park and ride. So the last discussion we had with them, they mentioned that that is currently one of the few free parking areas in Reston. So they weren't super big on getting rid of it, but we are looking at the possibility of potentially getting rid of that park and ride and making it a park area. But those are all conversations that we need to have with VDOT before we can come up with a solution on what's going to be done there, because it is their property.
Wow.
Yeah,
And then
That troubles me only that, number one, you've laid out where you are in the process and what your schedule is. And number two, that in the beginning of your presentation, you said that some of the decisions that went into this were economic. Well, it
Yeah, I
turns
think
seems to me that the economic effect of this solution is having the most adverse impact on Hidden Creek. Maybe there are better solutions that may be a little bit more costly, and maybe VDOT needs to be part of the solution. I'm not getting comfortable that we're proceeding the best possible way with this. And I appreciate getting educated on this, but I'm a little bit less comfortable now than I was 45 minutes ago.
Can
Let me
I
just follow up real
answer
quickly
some
that,
questions here?
I'm sorry, hold on 1 second. If you don't mind, I'm sorry. Just to respond to John, there's two parts to that. One is that we are moving deliberately. This is not a fast process. It's been underway for about 6 years. You cannot create a detention solution south of the WD trail, upstream of the WD trail, that's sufficient without removing roads and buildings in order to detain enough water to offset, in other words, to compensate for the flow that this project will address. You can't do it. There's no space. So we built ourselves into a corner where the old historic rail grade, the road, and all the buildings that have been subsequently built are occupying all the room that you would need to build such a facility. It simply doesn't exist anymore. So we're trying to address the current condition. And you are not incorrect in the sense that the golf course, is open space, but it also does lie downstream of the WD trail. So the do nothing option would eventually cause severe adverse impact to that facility, which would then be shifted entirely on the private owners and the members to resolve, because the county would have no role in it if that were the case. And the WD trail would have to have a bridge constructed. So we're trying the best we can to meet a happy median, but in order to not impact all the existing infrastructure, we have to transfer that energy, that flow, through the embankment, which is acting as a dam, and then have that secondary embankment alleviate that energy. But again, the goal would be to preserve the playability and the current use on the golf course.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm picking up more time than I deserve, but thank you very much for your answers. I appreciate it.
oh, thank you, John. Good conversation, good exchange. I'm learning as we go as well. The one thing I would note, the golf course overlook property, it's actually in site plan right now, so it's been through the rezoning process. But it is apparently at P&Z, or it's at Design Review Board for demolition permit. So that's apparently what's going on. That we got several hands up. Tammy, you've been very patient. Lynn, I know you're back, and then Joe, I see you have your hand up. So let's go with Tammy first.
Okay, this is an incredibly complex issue, and I have a whole number of questions and a whole bunch of comments. So bear with me. Thank you, John, for pointing out that Hidden Creek is no good deed goes unpunished. Oh, you have a beautiful flat space. Let's put a giant pond there. Let's go back to some sequential comments, and this isn't necessarily in linear order. The VDOT parking lot provides free parking for the bus traffic that goes to the Pentagon, not served by Metro. It also provides access to users of the WNOD. So there's been a lot of conversation, and within Friends, we have disagreements about whether the VDOT paved parking lot should be eliminated. And I'm going, sitting on the P&Z committee, oh hell no, we're someday going to get a giant soccer field in Isaac Newton Square. I guarantee you there's not parking for 4 teams of soccer cars within Isaac Newton Square. So we are going to need that parking lot to serve that fabulous amenity that we're dying to have. So that's number one. Number two, let's go back and look at the orange map. And I'm going to make some comments on this. Can that be brought up, Shannon?
Yes. You guys see it?
Okay. If you carefully look at this, at the edge, at the eastern edge of the map, you'll see Wheelie Avenue, which indicates we have a whole bunch of Comstock property, 32 acres. This is county property leased by Comstock for 99 years, and I don't know, they've been in there for a while, so maybe it's 91 years now left on their lease. But it is, and then we have a huge amount of property that is even on the other side of the Dulles Toll Road that goes under the Dulles Toll Road in streams that were paved over when there was no such thing as stormwater management practices. My concern is that Comstock's been around, and I have heard over and over and over again at zoning meetings that retention basins are out and that sites are supposed to retain their own stormwater on their site. What is curious to me is tonight we are getting a photo of Kaiser's flooding with zero mentioning of the fact that Comstock's building directly adjacent to the L-shaped ditch that is south of Sunset, nary a mention of that. And I have a problem with that because Comstock's very powerful in the county, and all of a sudden, and it is a slow process. I'm not saying anybody's, fibbing here, but we get a project that's funded and in design and going to happen. That doesn't happen in Fairfax. If you want a traffic change, it's a 10-year from when it's approved to when it's built. And now all of a sudden we're having this thing fly through. And the fact that Comstock office building isn't mentioned, and it was drastically flooded during this 11-ish storm is curious to me. So looking at this orange, has anybody studied how Comstock, and now they're going in for an area that's not even orange on this map with their new promenade, deal. Are they retaining their stormwater on site, or are they just shoveling it over to the west into this ditch to go down into Hidden Creek under the WOND? I'm curious about that.
So I have not seen thank you for bringing that to my attention. The only flooding that I'd heard about was the Kaiser building. I wasn't aware that this
Comstock, they were furious. My dentist is on the top floor of that building. And when that happened, he had gone down there and looked at it and said, holy smokes, Sam, that's a mess. So,
I'm sure.
Yeah, they really, I mean, and there's no question we have a problem, and there's no question we're going to have more problems because the climate is changing and our storm frequency and strength is increasing. So this flooding is going to happen. We need to do something. We just want to figure out what exactly is the best thing for all of the community, because we have a whole bunch of properties impacted. for your information, I spoke to the covenants manager of RA. You absolutely have to get this approved by the design review board. There's no question. You're going on to covenant land, you're making an exterior change, you have got to, and they're hard to get into. So, you know, that's number one. Okay. So we're now combating this huge flooding. Can you tell me, please, how deep? We're not supposed to have retention basins anymore. And now all of a sudden we're going to have 4-acre retention basin on a very storied, valued, rested open space. What is this thing going to look like? How deep is it?
So there's going to be like 2 cells to this pond. We're going to have a 4-bay, which kind of helps capture a lot of the sediment that enters from the first flush, like the first like inch or so of water that falls, captures the most amount of pollutants and debris and stuff like that. So it's going to enter into our 4-bay. I can show you what I'm looking at. Try to at least.
Yeah, if you have a drawing of that, would be fabulous. Thank you.
I have the plan view of it, so it's not
That's fine. Plan
very
view is fine.
graphic, but it's better than nothing. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have our 4-bay right here, so that'll capture like the first flush, and that's where a lot of the sediment and debris and stuff like that is going to settle out of. So it makes it easier to maintain the pond over duration.
Who's responsible for that pond maintenance?
Fairfax County will maintain this pond.
So they have to have access to the golf course to do this. And they
So
have to have equipment that won't screw up the grass, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah, so we're proposing an access road right here, that's going to access off of Isaac Newton Square. And then there's an existing pond right here. So we're going to be kind of utilizing that access road that is currently there, and extending it around our proposed pond, all the way up to the top where this cart path is, in case we need to get in and do any maintenance to the outfall structure. So the ponding elevation is going to be at 330. That's going to be where our retention standing water elevation is. And then once it rains, that water gets pushed out and then water will fill up on top of it. So like I said, the 4-bay is going to have 6 feet of ponding, and then the main cell of the pond where we're going to get the like water quality removal is also going to have about 6 feet of ponding in it.
Okay, so I'm taking from this that the pond is going to have standing water in the 4-bay all the time. Is that correct? And the proposed pond, part of the pond, the bigger rectangle, this is all one giant basin, correct? All right.
Yes.
With steep sides, I can see how close these topo lines are together. So it's steep.
So
and then it goes down 6 feet into the, you know, so you get that quantity control. Okay. So keep in mind that golf course overlook is to the left side overlooking this of your map. And
of course overlook is up here.
Yeah, you can come out a little bit. And then on the other side, on the Isaac Newton side, we have another developer who has dreams of putting luxury townhouses overlooking this. They thought they were going to overlook a golf course. Now looks like they're going to be overlooking something really ugly, dangerous with steep sides. Is this thing going to be fenced off?
We don't have a fence currently proposed on it. So with this, there are the steep sides, but then we also have a like a safety bench right here that's going to be pretty shallow. So if something did happen, it's not like you're falling all the way down 12 feet to the bottom of this. There's going to be a
Wow, 12 feet deep. Wow, I thought it
I
was
would
bad
also
at
add,
6.
I would also add that upstream, there's an open pond south of the toll road. Preston's built around lakes that have no fencing. And this is not going to be actually that steep sided to be vegetated. So it's not this
That was
summer. It's
my
actually
next
much
question.
smaller. I'm
Are
sorry.
you gonna plant this, are the sides, so that people in Overlook and the luxury townhouses and God knows what else will be built on Isaac Newton that's tall, that's supposed to be a urban neighborhood, so tall buildings, when they overlook this, it's not gonna look like some weedy piece of crap.
Well,
I mean, this is expensive property we're talking about,
right.
and this is
Shannon,
on
would
a
you
golf
mind?
course.
Right. Shannon, would you mind showing the pictures of the existing condition on the golf course?
Sure. Try to. Can you see
So,
the driveway?
your current condition, it's really not, it wasn't intentionally planted on the golf course. It just grew in with mostly cattails. So we'll intentionally plant it to provide vegetation that's compatible with the golf course use and provides good water quality benefit, wildlife benefit, and visual benefit. So that's our goal.
Okay,
And
so it would be holistically, environmentally, and Fairfax is gonna pay for this. Me as a taxpayer, I'm gonna pay for this to go on Hidden Creek Golf Course, so it's environmentally appropriate.
yes, ma'am. And so that it meets all the standards necessary to perform and meet the project goals. Yes, and we'll maintain it. So.
Okay, and the slope sides that aren't that steep, so they slope down, and then there's a ledge so that you don't fall 12 feet, you only fall 6 feet, and then you fall 6 more feet if you fall. I mean, I'm thinking of kids. The golf course
Sure,
Overlook
sure.
is going to have kids there. These, for sure, these luxury townhouses are going to have children. The huge density that has been approved for Isaac Newton Square is 2,000, I think, or maybe 1,600 dwelling units. Kids there. Kids are going to be at the Isaac Newton on the soccer field. Kids, this is an attractive nuisance for a kid. This looks like heaven to me, but I just want to be sure visually, environmentally, and safety wise, everything is being taken into account if indeed we have to have 4 acres of this on Hidden Creek Golf Course. And I want to shout out to Joe for bringing this up, that Hidden Creek seems to be, hey, they can do it. They have the room. As a community member who does not golf, but is very interested in climate change, I'm aware that we have a problem, but I'm also aware this has to be designed and built thoughtfully with this kind of vegetation that you're showing here that is conducive to a nice view with wildlife preservation and habitat for the people who are going to be living looking at this. And we can't have this a bald, weedy 4 acres of chaos there. So that's my concern.
All right, thank you, Tammy. Lynn, do you want to go next? I know you, or should we come back to you later?
Thank you, Walter. Yeah, I will be very brief because I think
Okay.
I raised my hand after I saw Joe had his hand up. So I feel like I'm going out of turn, but I just want to echo every single point that Tammy made is spot on. The attractive nuisance is exactly what I was thinking when we are talking about these families that are going to be moving into Isaac Newton Square and Golf Course Overlook. And the Montessori school is right there as well. So, the lawyers do have a term that they like to use, and that is attractive nuisance. And I've actually heard that term come from the mouths of the owners of the golf course currently. Tammy, thank you. All great points, and you've covered everything that I would want to say. Thank you.
All right, Lynn, thank you. Joe, let's go to you, and then we'll go to Connie.
Hi, thank you for hosting this. Just a few quick questions. I'm going to be fairly golf centric since my interest here is as a member of Hidden Creek for maybe 9 or 10 years. And to start, one of the things I was wondering is, Lynn is putting out alternative options. Are we at a phase right now where this is the option and this isn't open for discussion, that it's either this or nothing?
Well, I think, to be fair, and I appreciate Lynn's comments, we did look at a significant range of options, but there is no option to prevent flooding and eventual failure of the WD other than passing water through it at a much higher rate. There's simply not enough room south of the trail, vertically or horizontally, to hold enough water to do the job. So we either don't do anything and take our chances, or we pass water through the trail. But if we pass water through the trail, we're required by law to make sure it doesn't degrade the downstream property. So if we build the pipes to the trail, we have to reconfigure the pond to prevent the blowout of the stream and the blowout of the pond dam itself on the Hidden Creek Golf Course. So it's kind of a conundrum. Again, it's two dams in series, the WD and the existing pond, which the footprint of the existing pond is not tremendously dissimilar from the pond we're proposing. We're just going to resize and reshape it. So, we have exhausted the options in terms of what's feasible upstream of the WD trail.
Okay, so we have reached the point where if something's going to be done, this is it, right? So
yes, sir, that's
saying,
correct.
hey, why don't we do this? Why don't we do that? Why don't we do this? We're moved beyond that. This is it or it's not, right? So
yeah, we consulted with a lot of engineers to look at options upstream, and we have good consensus that there's really just no room. The county continues to require businesses and redevelopers upstream of the WD trail to over-detain on their property in order to offset the flooding downstream, the inadequate flow. So we don't have control over that process. That takes decades. So we're just trying to address the concerns and the existing conditions as best we can.
okay, and then just to reiterate or expand upon something that John had mentioned previously about having a golf course architect actually look at this, because what you've laid out on your proposed plan just sounds like someone, drag and drop the green 80 yards closer to the tee box, not realizing that it's a steep grade down from that cart path where there wouldn't really be a feasible place to put a green, making the hole fairly ridiculous from a design perspective. And then moving the tee boxes on 5 back, the only place you could move them back would be on the driving range. So that would impact the Hidden Creek driving range. And then having an access road, if I understood what was stated earlier, going from Isaac Newton behind the pond to the cart path on number 5. I mean, that makes that hole, especially if you're moving the tees back, probably unplayable for a number of members who can't hit it very far. So I'm just hoping that, if this is what's going to happen, that someone who has a grasp on golf course architecture and design is going to be involved in coming up with a design that works with your pond and also makes the hole playable, and we don't lose practice facilities as a result. I mean, who would that fall upon? Would that be Fairfax County would be engaging those people, or would you tell Hidden Creek they have to do that? I mean, how do you foresee that happening?
Well, everything that we design, we have to ultimately bear the cost of. We certainly would work with the owner to make sure we're addressing the concerns, and they can inform our process. Is what we typically do, is work in tandem to make sure what we design meets the needs, and that would be the goal. So the county would bear the cost of the architect, but clearly the final agreement and approval of how the layout occurs would be with the owner.
So the owner being Wheelock, who wants to develop the property.
We don't have any means of. I mean, certainly you all can have input. We just don't have any means of. We have to talk with whoever is responsible for making sure we build it correctly, design and build it as best we can.
Okay, and did I understand what? Is it Shannon? I'm sorry if I don't have any mind. What you said, that you're going to have an access road from Isaac Newton behind the pond to the cart path on 5?
Yeah. So here are the tee boxes. 4, 5, I believe. So we're not shifting the further tee box. Here's the shorter tee box. It's in this light gray. So we're not shifting these very significantly at all. We would be moving the hole from here to here, along with the.
So those are the two. So that's the far back tee box and then the one adjacent to the existing car path. What about these sets of tee boxes farther up the number 5 hole on the opposite side of the cart path on number 5? Are those impacted by this design?
I'm not sure if we have, how many tee boxes are on hole number 5?
There are 4 that are by the cart path. So there are
So
the
I think
2 that are on
these
that are
two.
short of the pond, and then there are 2 that are beyond the pond left of the cart path.
So I think there's one right here that we wouldn't be impacting, and then there's this third one right here.
So the ladies' tee will be impacted, or the
Yeah.
forward tee.
And I think we'd be shifting it here. So we'll.
Isn't that the driving range? I'm sorry. I'm having a hard
The
time
driving
figuring out on the
range.
topography.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think the driving range is up here.
Yeah, and I mean the driving range is adjacent to those 2 back tee boxes. Like
Mhm.
literally there's a row of like junipers and this driving range. So, but
Maybe.
I guess we'll just need to talk to management at Hidden Creek to see what involvement they have had and plan to have in this process, because I'm just not visualizing how this whole number 4 would be playable based on what you have here.
So like Charles said, if the golf course came back to us with comments on how they would like to see these holes kind of redesigned, then we would do our best to accommodate that into our design.
And I know you mentioned this is a fairly deliberate process. What are your, I think on the project website, you were thinking this was going to commence in 2022. Is that still what your plan is?
That's our hope. So it's based on if we can get the land rights that we need for this property. So we need land rights from Golf Course Overlook. We need land rights from Isaac Newton. And we also need land rights from the golf course. So once we're able to obtain all of that, then we'll be able to move forward with our final design. But until then, we're in the position we currently are.
Okay. Do you have any questions? That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Okay.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And this is a very tricky situation given the dynamics of the owner and the project. So thank you for speaking up for the interests of golfers. I know Lynn is doing the same here as well. Connie, do you want to go ahead, and then we'll see if anybody else has any other comments or questions? But
yeah, it is really tricky. I agree that a golf course designer should be consulted, but not necessarily one hired by the owners of the golf course. I'd like to see the county bring in the golf course designer to walk it and make their suggestions. You've got to get out from behind your computers. I don't know if you stormwater folks are familiar with the road from nowhere that is on the golf course, because some Fairfax County Department of Transportation person at his or her big computer thought it'd be great to put a road across, because they thought there was room between the WNOD and the cart path, and there isn't. And yet we are stuck with a road in the comprehensive plan. Has it been taken out?
Yep.
Oh, you
Yeah,
got
we-
it out.
Not voted
well,
on.
that's right. We still have to finish the process,
Excellent.
but that's right.
Excellent. Fantastic. Good. Thank you for that good news. So so this is another case. Get out from behind your computers, go walk the land, see what's really there. And that will help make a better decision. Now, I was really interested, I'll be very quick, but I was very interested in what Mr. Pagliatiello was talking about with, well, what's downstream from it? You know, you keep saying you've investigated upstream and there's no other options, but just real quick on the downstream, that fantastic rectangular athletic field is being put in. Could not something be put under that to hold stormwater? Also, I guess the golf course overlook, I guess the approvals are done, so you can't make them do anything under theirs. A lot of people need water for their rooftop gardens or whatever. There's lots of things going on with how to repurpose water. If you had the water, you might have the water if you use some of the storm water instead of putting it off to flood Hidden Creek. So any land that is that's being development that's happening downstream, please, county officials, find a way for them to take on some of this stormwater. That's all.
So
Thank
there
you,
are
Connie, and noted, but Shannon, go ahead.
there are redevelopment standards for the entire Fairfax County. Reston has this problem area right now. So we're trying to help mitigate that problem with requiring the over detention. In Tyson's, they also have an over detention requirements or very like populated, developed sections of the county. We are requiring stricter like water quality requirements where they have to detain the first inch of runoff. And then the water quality regulations are also changing in 2011, I think. They changed to require more water quality treatment devices be provided on the sites, along with redevelopment requirements and detaining to the pre-development conditions, meaning assuming your site is completely forested, you have to detain and release the water from your site at that rate, which will help, but it doesn't fix the problem immediately. It's going to help it over time, but we have to wait for everything to redevelop before we're going to really see the benefits of that, and that's not going to happen overnight. So the regulations are changing to help benefit it. It's just something that is not going to be a really quick fix, unfortunately. But I totally appreciate what you're saying.
Yeah, Shannon, if you could go back to the drainage map, and then I'll see if anybody else has any questions or comments. But Connie, just to build on that last point that Shannon was making, I think that one. Something else to note, the Dulles Toll Road and Dulles Access Road built before VDOT had any responsibility or the Federal Highway Administration for stormwater. So we've got a lot of impervious surface there. You know, that in addition to some of the older development that really just didn't have the stormwater requirements at the time. So we're digging out of a hole, you know, in terms of our stormwater challenge. And honestly, that's the reason that you and that we all pay an extra tax on our real estate taxes specifically for stormwater, because we have a lot of development, a lot of impervious surface that was put in place before these stormwater requirements existed. So this is a challenge all over the place. But Connie, thank you. It is a question of what the heck we do now. So, other questions, Tammy? I see a real hand with you.
Thank you. Also, Shannon, I wanted to ask a question about this retention basin, this 4-acre basin. The outflow of it proceeds north and connects up with the existing stream that runs through Hidden Creek now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That stream goes east and impacts Wheelie Avenue. And during a storm, not only do we have a flooding in the VDOT lot, we have Wheelie Avenue with serious ponding. That is a major north-south arterial in Reston, and cones are regularly put up there right in the area. That's wetlands on each side, east and west of Wheelie, and that in the area of Chestnut Grove Apartments. So that outflow has to be slowed down enough that, and it's probably flooding because of the enormous, storm catchment. God knows the ground, the golf course of all areas and the gardens around it and the private homes around it don't have that much impervious area, at least the area to the north of this that's coming back down into this Hidden Creek stream. But we do need to pay attention that we are not exacerbating the flooding of Wheelie in the Chestnut Grove area. And Walter, do you know what I'm talking about when I say Chestnut Grove? Are you familiar with where that is?
I do.
did not know about this. John Carter told me, oh, when you do your environmental chapter, be sure you have Wheelie, the flooding on Wheelie, fixed. So I'm going, yes, sir. And I'm going, really? I don't travel there, so I was not aware. And then it dawned on me, dude, I do see big orange cones on Wheelie after big storms. That's what that's about. So he said, yeah, that Wheelie can be impassable there. We can't have that. That's a north-south artery main road in Reston. Thank you. And by the way, I'm giving you stormwater people a hard time. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate the work you do on behalf of the county. Your job is super important. We just want to be sure that when this Hidden Creek affair and the flooding and the water that's not their fault is actually contained, designed, fixed, whatever, that it's done properly, and for sure the golf course is not degraded. So I would like to third the suggestion and almost requirement that a golf course architect be involved with this to make it the very best it can be, if indeed a 4-acre retention basin, not all the water, if it was water all year round, it could be a marvelous water feature. It isn't. So I'm very concerned about what this thing is going to look like.
So there will be water in it all year round.
And about how deep is that?
6 feet.
Is it going to go from the catchment basin into the regular part, or will it be just in the catchment basin, or do we know?
This
The
whole
sediment forebay
the sediment forebay and the proposed pond
will
even
always have water in it.
always have water in it unless it's super dry and the water evaporates and then we don't
Okay,
have
but
water.
Shannon, about how deep do you think that water is going to be?
6 feet.
Going to stay at 6 feet.
Going to stay at 6 feet. Yeah.
So there will be some sort of clay bottom retaining it so it doesn't seep out.
The edges will be, like I said, we'll have that safety bench in there. So in case someone rolls down the hill, they have that flat area.
You mean after their hole in one?
Yeah, yeah. Too much celebrating. So yeah, so this will be a wet footprint. It's not going to be drain in, drain out constantly. But looking at the sub base of it, to see what kind of material, we have a geotechnical engineer involved with this, to make sure that it's suitable. And then I also looked up where the Chestnut Grove apartments were, and I believe they are right here for people who
Correct.
do
That is
not
correct.
know where they are located. And then in terms of making the problem at Wheelie Culvert worse, so with our design, we're looking at what the existing flow rate currently is through the 1850s culvert. And with our design, we're making sure that we are not exceeding that rate. So we're not going to be making it worse than what the existing condition currently is.
So if I understand it, you're having the square box original stone culvert remain, and additional, you're having 2 giant concrete culverts. Are they on each side of the box or on east?
One side of the box.
On each side of the
No,
box?
one side.
On one side. On the
One
east?
side of the box. Yeah.
You
And
know
then
if
it's gonna
east or west? I think it's
Good
got
question.
the east.
It's on
I
the
think
west
it's-
side.
It is the west.
Yeah, there's also a sewer line right in the middle, so we have to go
Oh.
west of. There's a sewer to the left of there's actually
Okay.
a second sewer going in. So there's all kinds of utilities through there.
Okay.
So here's the existing culvert. We're proposing this 8x4, so dual 4x4 box culverts next to each other. And then we're gonna be routing the majority of the flows through our new culverts, and then the really high storm events that are massive, we'll utilize both pipes. But for most of the storm events, we're just gonna be using this box culvert because it's gonna be newer, better suited to handle flows. And then this is only gonna be for emergency flows, emergency large events.
Okay, so the old stone will be only used in huge events? Is that what we're hearing?
So these new pipes are they have more capacity than what the old culvert does. So
Correct.
we're gonna be able to,
Okay. And that drying out isn't of concern that it might collapse because it's dry? I'm just asking. I have no idea about stone, culverts.
Yeah, it'll receive a lot less flow, so I think it should be in good shape. I mean, it'll definitely prolong its life. And
Okay.
it will get flow during anything above a 10-year storm event. So, but what'll happen is it'll turn on and it will turn off pretty quickly. So the storm will come up. Once it hits a certain peak, it will activate that culvert, push water through it. But then as soon as the rain starts to attenuate, it'll drop back down, cut the flow off there, and all of it will continue through the new pipes.
Okay, so that's going to be the flow through all of the culverts is artificially controlled.
I'm sorry, it's artificially what?
Is artificially controlled by
Well,
some certain
it's all
valve.
through gravity. It's all through gravity.
Oh, it
It's
is
just,
gravity.
yes.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
it's all gravity.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tammy. Very good questions. Does anyone else have any additional questions at this point? Comments? Lynn, do you have your hand up?
Yes. So one of the things that we had sent to county staff, specifically to Charles, and I guess it was is it Corinci? I don't know how you got. I know Charles, I had sent it originally to, I guess, your boss, and then he shifted it.
Craig, yeah, Currency.
Yes,
Currency is my boss. Yeah.
So one of the options that was presented was actually from a civil engineer who happens to be my husband, that used to run the American Concrete Pipe Association. And the common practice from a civil engineering perspective or an engineering perspective is to build a big, huge box culvert, a basin underneath the VDOT lot, and put a smaller pipe. So you have got a big enough culvert to hold the water and then drain it through a smaller pipe through the existing structure. And I thought that you came back and said that there already was a huge culvert under the VDOT lot to detain water and release it slowly. So
No,
on
sorry,
this,
go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna just say, I don't see that on this map if it currently exists.
No, what I said is during our value engineering study, we had looked at that very alternative. It's a really common use is to
Yeah.
put an underground vault system. And we looked at that, but as Shannon showed earlier, there simply is not enough space You couldn't build a deep enough pit wide enough to take enough water to prevent the need for the large pipes to WOD. As Shannon showed, the ponding spreads all the way across and back up to the Kaiser building during the large enough storms. So there's not enough space under the VDOT parking lot and enough depth. So we have the combination of a constrained area, a large water volume, and we have a bunch of utilities under there, which limit the amount of piping you can put because they're spread out under there, but they're also at certain elevations that you can't go around the pipes.
So
Existing
I
sewers
just
and
wanted
everything
to point
else.
out, we're foregoing new accepted best practices and turning the clock back and, using
No, we.
methodologies that are longer.
Wait, I have to wait.
I would just actually just counter that. We're not foregoing it. And
Right.
what we're doing is we assessed it, and it's just not feasible in this particular space. So we use it commonly throughout the county and county projects as well as private developments, but it's simply not feasible given the constraints of the site. We can't put in a vault system that would have enough benefit to offset the need for the solution that we came up with. That's kind of what we came up with. I'm sorry, Chris, you were going to say something.
One of the things, if I could ask, I'm starting to think about after this town hall. I think there are a couple things that would be helpful, and then I see Joe has his hand up. I'll go to you. Either Shannon, you, or Charles, I think it would be very helpful if you could compile a summary of the alternatives that were considered before this point and why they were not chosen. I'd like to have that information and then share it with folks so they could look at it and then ask questions about it or poke holes in it, whatever. That would be very helpful. The other thing that I'm also thinking, and go to you, Joe, is I believe it looks like this is a project that could benefit from additional citizen input. So I'll be thinking about a way that we could either have maybe an additional meeting or two on this, or maybe a volunteer group of citizens who care about this would like to review the data and also provide suggestions on how to minimize the impact. The other thing that I would be helpful, Charles, is in addition to a review or analysis of alternatives that were considered and then discarded. Very early in this town hall, John Palatiello brought up the low points. If you could also, if you have those data at some point, to provide those as well, I think that would be very helpful because, to be honest, I'm not clear on the heights. It's not obvious from just being in that area what's higher than what. So that could be helpful as well. Joe, I see your hand up, and I assume that's not an old hand.
No, yeah, I had a quick question. Actually, two questions. The first would be, so we're diverting the water from the commuter lot, and that's dammed by the WNOD trail, to this pond on number 4 that will then release water into the creeks that wind through the golf course and go towards Wheelie Avenue. And what I'm wondering is, right now, as Lynn and John know from Plankin Creek, when there is a heavy rainstorm, those creeks are inundated with water and have washed away some of the bridges or destabilizing some of the bridges. And I'm wondering if this solution with this retention pond that's going to release water into those creeks is going to alleviate that problem going forward, or will it exacerbate it?
It shouldn't make it worse, because we're analyzing what the existing flows are in the stream coming through our project. So knowing what those are, that's like our our limit. We're not allowed to exceed what those rates are. So we're not going to be adding more flow to the stream to wash out the bridges more frequently. We're actually going to be decreasing the flow a little bit. I don't think it's going to fix the problem if those bridges currently get washed out. They may still get washed out after our project, but they won't get washed out more frequently than they currently are.
Okay.
And then just to answer the question that Walter said about the elevations. So here's what our existing survey map looks like. So the golf course plaza overlook property, the lowest elevation here is a 342. And then where we're actually proposing our pond and where we're going to be outfalling those pipes that run under the WO&D trail is at 340. So it is a little lower. We are proposing the pond at the lowest spot within our limits of clearing. That helps.
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. And also, do you have the elevations for the park and ride?
Yeah, so the park and ride is up here, and like I mentioned before, the low spot was, I don't remember what it was, but here the 354, so it looks like the low spot's probably around a 353. So it is higher than what downstream of the WO&D trail is. So then we are putting the pond at this low point. And then down here, the existing pond drops down to 332, the very bottom where bottom of the pond is. So this is the area where our pond is going to be.
Okay, thank you, Shannon. Joe, did you have another question?
Yeah, it's really quick. I was just wondering if the PowerPoint that Shannon was sharing was going to be posted on the project website, and if so, if it's not there, when it would be available.
It will be posted. I have to give it to our staff that posts it. So hopefully within the next week or so. Definitely in 2 weeks. Hopefully this week I can get it up there.
Okay.
And Shannon, in the meantime, if you could give it to Jose. Jose, could you send it around to the attendees at this meeting?
Happy to do so.
Okay.
Sorry, Walter, I had one more question. Sorry.
Sure, Lynn, no problem.
Question about this water going into the creeks around Hidden Creek. I know from Sue Bethel, who served with Doug Britt. They are two of Reston's most qualified environmentalists. And Sue was telling me that the water quality in the creeks on Hidden Creek is some of the best in Reston. So Joe's question led to my next question, which is, what is this going to do to the water quality in the creeks? There are tadpoles, there are fish in those creeks. So the question is, what is this additional runoff going to do to the water quality? Thank you.
Well, I'll jump in there. Shannon mentioned before, we can't increase the flow. So the goal of the project is to make sure that the flows that come out of the redesigned pond don't exceed the flows that are coming out of there now. That's the best protection we can give, is to not increase the flow. And it's interesting because it's a combination of factors. It's the flow, it's what the flow carries, and it's also the temperature. One of the biggest problems, we actually had a fish kill in Reston last year near Wheelie Avenue that was directly related to the temperatures coming off of parking lots. So one of the biggest threats to the fauna in the stream is the hot water during the warm months coming off these really hot surfaces and entering the stream. So the pond itself, by mixing the water, will reduce the temperature. So that's the best protection we can offer, is to keep those flows no greater than they are, to mix that water into a large pool where it not only takes out pollutants, but it also reduces the temperatures coming to it. And that's the best we can do on those. And As we said, the aquatic environment within the pond basin itself should actually offer good habitat, and that's one of the goals between storm events, is to provide a better habitat condition within the pond basin.
Thank you for that
Okay.
answer.
Thank you, Lynn.
Certainly.
Tammy, I see your hand up.
Yes, quick question. With your lowest point concept, Walter, Shannon, could we also have the just basic topo of the whole orange catchment area? That's one thing. The other thing is a prayer that when some of this orange area north of the Dulles Toll Road gets redeveloped, that the stormwater accumulating on those properties is contained, and that the need for this pond reduces, so that this flooding on Hidden Creek is a past history. And to that point, I will tell you, in every P&Z meeting, a member mentions purple roofs and the speaking to a blank slate. Developers don't want to hear about it because they think it's going to cost them more. It does cost them more to build. In the long run, it saves an enormous amount of money. But that because they're not the end users of the building, they're planning to sell this building. They're trying to get the most profit out of it. And that kind of stuff has to stop for our environment, so that we do catch as much of this extreme water as we can on sites. And for that reason, I'd love to see the topo of the whole orange area, so that I and others sitting on P&Z can be alert to tell these developers, you really do have to do this now. You really have to catch water on site. And I hope the stormwater people and the staff that work so hard on this stuff and are trying to help us will get in line and help us put forward, us citizens who are on advisory panels, to require developers to do their share. Right now, they're, trying to get away with as cheap as possible. And we can't do that anymore. We need to be responsible neighbors, every single person, and try to combat this problem as we go. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tammy. Any last questions or comments? Okay, let me just go over a couple things before we wrap up. First of all, as I said, I don't want this to be the last opportunity for this kind of dialogue and input. So I will talk with the project team about when either another forum like this can be scheduled a little bit down the road. I'd also ask the project team, I know they were taking notes during the comments and questions that were asked, and I would ask the team to take a while to digest those comments and to see where there might be some of the project elements improved based on comments that we heard tonight. The other thing is I'll also be talking with the project team about getting input on basically somebody who's a golf expert and the design and how this would impact the golf course, and to get some additional input from that point of view. As I mentioned, this is a little bit challenging in the sense of there's been a lot of activity proposed in this immediate area beyond the water and the flooding that comes through here. So this is something that I do appreciate very much, all of you who signed on tonight and who participated. It's clear that you care not only about this project, but I know you care about the community, and you're wanting to make sure that these are all done the way they should be, and frankly minimize impact on existing uses, and frankly are best for the environment. So I do appreciate that, and I would hope that there will be another opportunity here in the not too distant future to look at some of the data, and also to see what else, how the project might be improved at this point. This is a tough spot. I know the engineering, it sounds like Charles has been working on this, I believe, 6 years. Is that right, Charles? So this has been under review for a while, but it's not a bad time to step back and take a look at that, look at the data, the analysis that was done, and see if it all continues to make sense. So clearly there is a flooding problem here that has to be addressed. And as Tammy, you pointed out earlier, our floods aren't getting any smaller and or less frequent. So I think it is prudent to make sure that that we plan for that, and where we can act accordingly. So does anyone have any final comments? Charles, did you have anything, or Shannon, before we wrap up? Oh, I see Lynn.
Yeah, I want to thank.
I just have one more, and I'm going to be quiet, I promise. But
sorry, Charles, go ahead, Lynn.
Charles, I know you and I have been going back and forth, and Shannon, I really appreciate the work that you all have done. I echo Tammy's comments, but I think that you all need to understand where we are coming from in terms of the citizens and the people that live in this community. And we feel like we are being put upon by the neglect of the county. And I know that there were no requirements for all of this building that's been going on in the TSA for these developers to mediate or contain the water on their property. But we just feel like it's falling on our shoulders, and it's not fair. That's all. Thank you.
We certainly appreciate the input and the feedback, and these are the forums exactly that we learn the most. We also, again, as you said, Lynn, we really appreciate the fact that you are the residents in the community that we need to work with to come up with a solution.
All right, Charles, thank you very much. Lynn, thank you for that last comment. Shannon, thank you for the presentation. Really educational. I learned a lot tonight, and I think hopefully everyone did all the way around. So I appreciate the dialogue. I didn't think we were going to go to 9 o'clock. I didn't think we were going to go this close to 9 o'clock, but it's okay. I think it was worth it. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And as always, don't hesitate to contact my office with questions or suggestions. I think everyone knows how to get in touch with Jose. So, all right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everyone.
you.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Walter.